So welcome LinkedIn, welcome YouTube and welcome Facebook to this LinkedIn Live with myself, Carey Davis-Munro, and my colleague Will Murtha. Morning, Will, first of all.
Morning from an apprehensive Totnes in Devon.
So this is Wellbeing Wednesday, and we were going to do this last week, but as I said in the little spiel that I was writing about this, women going through this phase experience menopause every single day. It's not just one day that we need to shout out about what we're going through, and see if we can support people. And as coaches, Will is a little bit apprehensive about this. Obviously, he's a man, so he can't put his hands up and say, I know this, I'm going through it. But actually, I know that as a coach, he is dealing with many of the same issues, situations that I see with the hundreds of women that we are both coaching. So that's why we're going to today leave behind symptoms. We're going to leave behind that biggest part of menopause that we're all talking about and balancing the hormones. And we're going to talk about something very, very different. We're going to talk about what this means for women at this point in their life, and really what I say to my clients about having the second half of your life, because that's the exciting bit. So we are going to go on a trek, and I'm going to use as a basis, there's a wonderful, wonderful couple of excerpts I'm going to use as a basis by a book by Christiane Northrup called The Wisdom of Menopause. And she does look at symptoms again, but she actually says that more than anything else, while your body is rewiring as a woman, we have to think about what this means for the mind, and we have to think about what this means for the potential. So the first thing that shows up for us in many, many ways is sometimes a feeling of dissatisfaction. And we go through our lives and, Bill, we're carers, aren't we, women? I don't know about you with your clients, but the clients that I'm seeing in very tough places, they have had a load upon their shoulders for a very, very long time. And they've almost decided that I cannot go a step further with the load that I'm carrying. Is that what you see with your clients?
Yeah, I always say that the clients that are the most challenged, we've had pandemic, we've had sandwich generation. So an entrepreneurial businesswoman who has got a busy family, children, perhaps a mother or father to look after as well or watch out for, and run her own business through the pandemic. I don't think tests with all of that and the menopause on top, I don't think it comes any harder. And I've had dozens of clients like that, because obviously 90% of my client base is women. I've had dozens of women that I've coached through the pandemic and since, this year, who I can't even go there with imagining all the demands, all the heavy lifting that they're trying to do. And no wonder so many of them, when they come to coaching at the beginning, are on the edge of kind of breakdown. I know we can talk about breakdown before breakthrough, but they are at their wit's end. And I think you probably see it as well.
Yeah. And you know what? The biggest thing that I see is that women are adrenally exhausted. Our enteric nervous system is challenged like nothing before. Hormones aside, our endocrine system is crying out, but so is our enteric nervous system. And I want to read you this little extract, because I think this is where lots of us find ourselves. And like any behavior change, Will, we are dealing with noticing this. So this is what she says. As I was in menopause and approaching, I found myself unable to tolerate distractions like my 18-year-old daughter asking me, when's dinner? When she could clearly see I was busy. Why, I wondered, was it always my responsibility to turn on the stove, begin to think about my family's food needs, even when I wasn't hungry and deeply engrossed in a project that was really lighting me up? Why couldn't my husband get the dinner prep started? Why did my family seem to be almost paralysed when it came to prepping a meal? Why did they all wait in the kitchen as though unable to set the table or pour a glass of water until I came into the room and my mere presence announced, oh, Mum's here, now we're going to get to eat? Still, during my childbearing years, I accepted this most good naturedly as part and parcel of my role as wife and mother. In doing so, I unwittingly perpetrated it, partly because it felt so good to be indispensable. And I want to talk about that, Will, but I just want to finish this off. During perimenopause, I completely lost patience with this behavior on all levels, whether at home or at work. I could feel a fiery volcano within me ready to burst, and a voice within me roaring, "Enough! You are all able bodied, capable individuals, grown ups. Everyone here knows how to drive a car and boil water. Why is my energy still the organizing principle around here?" And this is something that I am seeing show up with my clients again and again, Will. It's sort of, I've had enough. I can't do this anymore, isn't it?
The only bit that was missing at the end of that kind of monologue was that, it's like the sort of the head wanting to explode, because
Yeah.
I think the more I've got to learn. I mean, Jane, my wife, is a good friend of yours. I've watched Jane. She's just about to come to the end of her 50s. Most of her 50s has been going through the menopause, so I've been quite close up with that. I've coached many, many women through their menopause, not as a purposeful menopause coach, but it's been almost a side show of what is going on. You can't not deal with it, with the energy, the different way they show up. I joke with several of my clients that I know very well, that we've got a good relationship with. And we joke that often we don't know what version is going to show up to a coaching session, because we coach people, as you know, every couple of weeks. And I will joke with them, and they will joke with me, that we're not sure. It takes me 5 minutes to kind of find my feet, to realize which version is showing up. Now,
Yeah.
to a lot of men that have got no idea of this concept, if it's a manager, an entrepreneur, a leader, someone in your team, if they've got no conception whatsoever, and many haven't, let's get this right, they're not even in out the first gear as far as understanding what a woman goes through. It can be really difficult in the workplace, because workloads, pressure, deadlines, nothing is taken into consideration about if someone is going through a lot of stuff at work, at home anyway, with family,
Yeah.
and then on top of that, the menopause. I'm not going to go into the symptoms, we all know them, but as far as the psychological, spiritual, emotional impacts, they are every bit as important, I think, as looking at the physiological. And I totally buy into it. Several of my influencer clients are friends with Davina McCall. Hands up to her for doing all the work she does on the physical, the physiological level of menopause. But what I don't think, and this is what we're exploring today, I don't think is talked about nearly enough, is what the ancients, what the indigenous tribes sort of understood, is that menopause is so much more than just the physical.
Yeah, so much more. And you're absolutely right. Different tribes around the world treat it very differently. And obviously they treat their elders very differently. That's not something that we do well here in the UK. But I also, before we talk about, and this is a time for women to really renegotiate and examine every area of their life. That's what I'd say. Yeah. Symptoms aside, we're not doing that today. What this is an opportunity for women to take control of and to navigate, take the wheel of, as you and I say, the next half of their lives. And I say to clients, because you have another half of your life. And this is where the excitement really, really comes. And a time to take agency over, sometimes we come out of our teens, we fall into relationships, and a lot of that first half of our life just happens. We fall, we're on a treadmill, we talk about this. We haven't had time to stop and say, well, hold on a minute, what did I actually actively want to happen, and at what point? And this is now that point. This is that opportunity. But before we talk about that, I do want to acknowledge, because I think we have to, this is also a time of loss. And I don't, we are talking about the positives today, but I know this is a time of loss for many. So, what we see turning up with our clients is a loss of self-esteem. I had a client yesterday, and she said, I'm just lost. I don't feel worthy of people. And my goodness me, she is beyond worthy, but we feel a lack of self-esteem. And I think this is maybe something to do with, most of us are very fortunate enough to have the choice for a lot of our life to bear children, and suddenly we don't have that choice anymore. So that choice is taken away. That can be a loss. On a really basic level, we lose over 30% of our collagen within the first 5 years. That changes our skin, that changes the way that we receive ourselves in the mirror. So that can be a real loss. We know that at that point, because of all our physical changes, and actually our figure changes and everything else, and our shape changes, we know that as women we become more invisible, and therefore that's a loss. And with all of this, it's, for me, Will, it's very much like we talk often about a loss of identity when people change career. But this is a real point for the women that we see, isn't it? For a loss of identity.
I mean, loss is spot on. I would also use another word, which is endings. And
Yeah.
because I majored on transition and transformation when I was, at the ILM, Institute of Leadership Management, getting my coaching badge, I was fascinated with how people deal with transformation and transition. And one of the best books that is out there on the market, it's 30, 40 years old now, William Bridges' Transitions. He talks about that when we're going through a change, now it could be a mini change, teenage, puberty. It could be a change with a male or female coming to the end of their career. I mean, I coach sports elite people that are coming to the end of their career in their, at the beginning of their 30s. I have to coach them in a really different way if I'm coaching a chairman that's coming out of their big global company in their late 50s, early 60s or 70s. So I've got to coach them in a different way. Now, nothing much is talked about the massive transformation that goes on with a woman with menopause. So, I always believe that endings are really beginnings in disguise. And we're not very good at understanding loss, which is coming back to what you were talking about, and endings, because first of all, you've got to deal with the ending, and then the problem is we get caught up in this illusion that we go straight from an ending to a new beginning. And all the science, all the data, all the evidence, and all my personal kind of experience coaching people around change is that we don't go straight from the old island, the ending, straight to the new island life, new beginning. There is a period in the middle, which Bridges talks about as the void. Now, the void is the kind of, I don't know who I am anymore. I feel lost. I feel confused. I feel my body's changing, my spirituality changing, my emotions all over the place. There's a recalibration going on. There's a kind of imagining going on. The ancients, the indigenous tribes understood that. They saw this as a rites of passage, as an initiation. No different to a man, a young man becoming an adult, or a girl becoming a woman, with the puberty. All of these things, we've kind of medicalized everything. We've kind of shoehorned, modern society, into everyone's lives. What we are not very good at looking at the ancient wisdom that understood that these rites of passage, where we're awakening to unlock our creativity. It's a time of self-knowledge, of reimagining who we are, relinquishing all those parts of ourselves that we never kind of tapped into. It's a massive opportunity for change. But the problem is we've got to live in the void. We've got to live in the uncertain, the unfamiliar, the unknown. And a lot of people aren't very good at that.
Well, no, especially as we know, when your mind isn't working the same way it usually does, when we've got brain fog, and when we're also dealing with, one symptom after another popping up, and some of us might not even be sleeping well. So, a lot of women will listen and think, God, well, that's all very well to say all of this, but how do I do that when actually I'm just trying to get day to day? And I hear you on that. I hear you on that. And we do support people just to take very tiny changes and tiny steps. But I think that this is quite an exciting time to look at, to really put the stop button on, to press that pause, and to look at healing some of what's gone on. As I said, sometimes we sort of arrive skidding to this point in our life. I should caveat some of what we're saying just I do know that some women go through a medical menopause or a surgical menopause much earlier. And I also do know that there is a stat about 1 in 1,000 women can be affected in their 20s. So obviously, we're not talking directly to the women who are going through at a very early age today. We are talking much more in a general term about the women who usually reach this in their 40s to 50s, but it's important to caveat that. But this is a time for us also to renegotiate our relationships, and I want to read you this next little bit because I think this is fantastic. She says, as my cyclic nature rewired itself, I put all of my significant relationships under the microscope. I began to heal my unfinished business from my past, and I experienced the first pangs, this was the loss again, of an empty nest, and established an entirely new and exciting relationship with my creativity and my vocation. I want you to hold on to that, Will. All of the changes I was about to undergo were spurred, supported, encouraged by the complex and intricate brain and body changes that are unheralded but inevitable and often overwhelming. But there is much, much more to this midlife transformation than just our raging hormones. Alleluia, I hear you say. Research into the physiological changes taking place in the perimenopausal woman is revealing that in addition to the hormonal shift, an end to childbearing, etc., our nervous systems are being quite literally rewired. Our enteric nervous system is going to have to work differently. And it's as simple as this. Our brains are changing. A woman's thoughts, her ability to focus, and the amount of fuel going to the intuitive centers in her temporal lobes of her brain are all plugged into and affected by the circuits that are being rewired. Really interesting, because I've been talking a lot about us having to have a lot of protein at this time. Everything's being rewired. After working with all of these women, she says, who've gone through this process, she says with great assurance that menopause is an exciting developmental stage. When we participate in it consciously, and this is again what I want you to hold on to, Will, consciously, it holds enormous promise for transforming and healing our bodies, minds, and spirits at a very deep level. So creativity and vocation, Will, and that real conscious what happens next. That's what she's talking to, isn't she?
Yeah, because the thing is, so much of, we're all creative. You can't teach people to be creative. You've got to help people to awaken the creativity within them. And what seems to happen, I've noticed with a lot of menopausal women that I'm coaching, is that once they reignite, once they reawaken old dormant creative forces within them, what they do is start to touch again a part of them, almost primal, but a part of them from childhood, from in their 20s, that they never were able to kind of, they got straight into having a young family and the rest of it, and they put everything else on hold. And, I really kind of connected when you said about the relationship, they're realigning their relationships.
Yeah.
I want to sort of add an extra layer to that, is that they're not just realigning what all their significant relationships mean to them, and put boundaries up, and kind of some might have to be let go of. But don't forget, that's one half of it, is the relationships in their environment. The other half is the relationship to themselves. Because, we've got to look at inward, outward, inward, outward. It's not just about the outer relationships that are shifting quickly. Your relationship with yourself, your identity, is radically changing. And this is why me and you as coaches, Harry, we're big advocates of journaling, because holding all this in your head is really hard, really hard. So get journal. My thing would always be, with a client, particularly if they're going through menopause, is get the journal out and literally write everything down. You will be shocked. You will be shocked when you look back after a few weeks. You will see 3 or 4 different characters and mood states showing up in your journal. And I find that fascinating, because, I will get a client to roll on for a few weeks, even a few months, and then look back at different mood states, emotional mood states, that they have gone through, and it is like a roller coaster. And the thing with journaling, just to kind of finish off with journaling, because I'll always bang on about journaling, is keep it really simple. You haven't got much time to probably do a journaling. So keep it really simple. At this moment, what is working for me? What is not working for me any longer? Which relationships are bringing me pain and suffering and kind of angst, and which relationships are flourishing and are feeding me and nourishing me? Keep it really simple. You know, the quality of your question will determine the quality of your answer. And if you want to get to know yourself, there is never a better time than journal than when you are going through menopause.
Yeah. I mean, one of the biggest things I'd add to that is, you know, sometimes, again, you're right, women are tired if we haven't slept, and if we're dealing with families, and if we're dealing with, you know, overwhelm. Then actually one of the things I always say is find your tribe, find other women to talk to. This is a fantastic time to align with a different set of women and to be able to talk about this. Bonding with other women at this time is really, really important for us. So if you're not someone who can sit and write, go and talk, find someone to talk to. It's very, very important.
Good point.
And what I would say is the most important thing is look at what your needs are. Most of us have gone through the last 30 years of our life. We're putting our needs last. We dish up dinner, we dish ourselves up last. There's a burnt bit of toast, we're the ones that have the burnt bit of toast. You know, we put our needs last because we put all of our family first. This is a change. Yeah, this is a time to really stop. Yeah, how can I empower other people to take care of themselves? And as we always say, Will, you know, this is a time to ask, what can I let go of? What doesn't serve me anymore? What doesn't support my needs? And really, you know, as Christiane Northrup says, put your relationships under a microscope. You know, I can be very, obviously we don't name any of our clients, but I've got 3 clients who are negotiating their way out of a relationship, out of this point of their life, to find the second half of their life and to find the joy. And it's going to be empowering. It is also empowering. There's a lot of fear, don't get me wrong, and there's a lot of courage needed. But the other side of this, there is the other half of their life, and there's gold. So put your relationships under the microscope. I should say, conversely, I have a couple of clients who are in the most precious of relationships, you know, that they've been in for a very, very long time. So let's have some balance there. But this is a time for creativity and joy. And I said to you, Will, before we came on, I can honestly say I haven't had time for creativity. You know, those sorts of needs which are vital, that light us up, that give us our passion and our purpose. We haven't, as women, had a time to do that. Let's do that now. And let's also move from giver and carer to given to and cared for. And that takes some renegotiation too. But I am definitely in that phase of, these are my needs. This is what I need from you. Because if we don't ask people and tell people what our needs are, how can they possibly know? Yeah, we will keep on doing all of the washing. We'll keep on doing all of the cooking. We'll keep on doing all of the housework. And actually, we have to stop and say, actually, no, I'm going to empower you to do that now. I'm going to hand that back. So it's about very much planning the next half of your life mindfully and with agency, Will, isn't it?
Well, and also this is where the journal comes back in. You know, this is a time I've noticed it in Jane, you know, living with Jane throughout all of her 50s. Going through the menopause, you know, seems to be a time of great self-knowledge, of re-identification. It's a time of letting go and embracing the new, the scary. You know, it's a time of kind of the potential to unlock and unleash all that untapped potential and creativity which is in there, so that you can step into your personal power, you know, and appreciate what this sacred rite of passage is. Don't get me wrong, it is bloody painful. It is bloody painful. But on the other side of pain, I see it with clients all the time, is their own personal power. Yeah. You know, it's their personal power. They're stepping in. And, you know, a good exercise in the journal would be write all the words down that you can start thinking about, beginning with RE. Because RE is about revisiting, really, going back, you know, whether it's reevaluate or reset or revise or realign, reimagine. I've got a few others here. Release, you know.
Yes, absolutely.
Release, revitalize, recharge, remake, repair. Write as
Yeah.
many words
Yeah.
as you can at the top of your journal and just see what questions start to emerge from them RE words, because this is what we're looking at with the menopause.
Yeah.
It is an RE exercise of
Yeah.
mind, body,
Totally.
spirit,
You're so
physiological,
right.
the whole lot.
Yeah, rejoice and revitalize would be
Yeah,
there for me as well.
yeah.
And as I said, maybe think about changing the people that's around you, and think about this as being a time for self-care. This is
Mm.
about you. This is a time for putting yourself first. A client said to me yesterday, "Oh, I did something that I know, I need to talk to you about because I didn't stay strong on it. I had a day that was just for myself, and I desperately needed it. I was going to get the house in order, and then my mum rang and said, could I come over, and could I see you for lunch?" And my daughter rang and she was a bit upset, so I ended up doing lunch for everybody and then dinner for everybody. And then she said afterwards, her husband said, "Why did you do that? We didn't plan on doing that." Oh, because I felt guilty. And because, so notice the emotions. Yeah, notice really what your priorities are. Come back to the priorities and come back to your real values. This is a time for you, and this is a time to say it's okay to say me first. Yeah. And let's not, I've got rejoice written here, but rejoice in the fact that we've got no PMS. Our uterine fibroids shrink. We've got no periods. Yeah, we've got no pregnancy risk. We should have greater self-assurance. So let's come back to all of that and really celebrate it. And I want to finish with this bit, because one of the things, and you and I said this last week, Will, lots of the women who are really self-aware and come to coaching is because they've experienced in this time a movement of psycho-spiritual healing. There's a massive movement worldwide, and
Yeah.
it's composed largely of women in their 30s, 40s, and 50s. And we are seeing an awakening en masse and beginning to deliver a much needed message of help and hope. And you, as a guy, because you coach women, I see you almost as an exception, Will, because lots of men won't be aware of that. But I want to finish with this. Christian Northrup says, "My personal experience tells me that the perimenopausal lifting of the hormonal veil, the cycle of hormones that keeps us focused on the needs and feelings of others, can be both liberating and unsettling. The midlife rate of marital separation, divorce, and vocational change confirms this." So we're going through massive changes. I, for one, I'm going to tell you, her husband left her, had always envisioned myself married to the same man for life, the two of us growing old together. This ideal had always been one of my most cherished dreams. At midlife, I, like thousands of others, had to give up my fantasies of how I thought my life would be. I had to face head on the old adage about how hard it is to lose what you never really had. It means giving up all your illusions, and it's difficult. But for me, the larger issue was where, rather than with whom and where, I would grow old. It was a warning coming from deep inside my spirit that said, grow now or die. Those were my choices. And she says, I chose to grow. And that's what we do with our clients.
I mean, the final thing I'd like to say about the growth thing is that, I remember getting involved with the early 2000s because I had a near-death experience in 1999. I got involved with the whole academic kind of movement, which amazing people that are academics, about the whole process of what a near-death experience does for you. It's an invitation to grow and change. And I always remember, that, because it seems that that's what happens with the menopause. It is an invitation. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's a blessing and a curse. I know that. And you have to take both. But just as the near-death experience kind of inspires post-traumatic stress and, almost a dark night of the soul on a spiritual level, this is very much Carl Jung psychotherapy. But, it kind of invites you to go through it doesn't invite you, it kind of forces you to go through this dark night of the soul. But on the other side of that trauma is post-traumatic growth.
Yeah.
And I think on a smaller level, but it still is important to the individual and to the woman, is that they are going through post-traumatic stress on some level. It's a full-on attack mental, spiritual,
Yeah.
psychological, the lot, emotional, and you're completely changing your character on many levels in some cases. And I think we need to treat it like that near death, where you're saying goodbye to the old self and hello to the new self, caterpillar to butterfly. And as we know, the caterpillar in transformation thinks it's dying. It's not, it's emerging anew.
Yeah, I had that written down as well. It's the most, it is. It's a transformation, and it's despite all of the difficult things were going on, and I purposely didn't want to go there. I do masterclasses on all of that and how to support it with food and everything else. But today I wanted us to really focus in on this, the physiological changes with the brain rewiring and the opportunities that this gives us.
The invitation
Invitation that this gives us. I hope that's been useful for people who have been listening. What do you resonate with? What landed for you today? I'd love to know your thoughts. Will would love to know your thoughts. Between us, as we say, over the last few years, we've coached hundreds of ladies moving through transition, through transformation. And it's a privilege for us to be able to support people. So what are your thoughts? How does that land? We always value your comments, your thoughts, your feedback. We are not going to be here next week, but we will be here the week after, as usual, bringing you Wellbeing Wednesday, coach to coach. But a little bit of a different session today. So we'd love to know how that felt for you. And we will be back the week after next. Will, thank you so much for your contribution. Despite the fear, you always have such a valid contribution to make.
Lovely. And we'll see you in a fortnight. Lovely.
Thank you all.